The last section here is the color schemes for your digital color wheel project, and make sure that you get all the photos put together in here. And also you want to come up with some sort of description that looks like that shows your primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. So I'll let you come up with that on your own. But let's talk about color schemes. The one thing I want to do right here is give us some more negative space. So just depending on how you make this thing look, sometimes more negative space is better. And I think I'm going to try to see if I can make this get a little bit bigger. That looks good. Maybe over here, scoot this up. So there's kind of a fine line between good negative space and bad negative space. Like if you had this and you had this scooted over here, this would be bad negative space when it looks like this and you have a gap over here. So make sure that you're doing good negative space. And let's work on the color schemes. So over here, this is taking up too much space, so I'm going to just kind of shrink it down and just give us a little bit more negative space. But the one thing that it's doing, it's making this title a little bit too small, so I can bring the size up this big. And also we can take a look at this thing, color schemes, right here, and if you look at it, there is a discrepancy with the font consistency between these two. So if you want to just select this, use the eyedropper and select that one. Now you have a consistent size in the font. That bold, this size here is the same size as this one. See that? So you want to keep some of your labeling consistent. Stuff like this, you want to have it all the same size, which you do. And you probably want to align this. I'm going to open the align palette, make sure that it's either aligned at the top or the middle or the bottom. So let's do color schemes. Now if you remember on that PDF that I was showing you, telling you about how color schemes work, and I need to open that file just so I can show you. Let's go to the desktop, Glenn in here, in graphic design, the color wheel. Here's the color wheel presentation. Hopefully you saved yours so you can study for the quiz that we'll take over color. And here's the slide with primary, secondary, and tertiary. And here are color schemes. So monochromatic is one color, analogous are colors close together, and complementary are 180 degrees across from each other on the color wheel. So let's look at the color wheel. Complementary are going to be across, like yellow and purple, red and green. Analogous are going to be like blue, green, green, and yellow, green, because those are all close together. Next to each other is analogous. There's also a cool analogous. These are cool. These are warm. And then also complementary and also monochromatic, like one color. So let's look at that here. Let's start with monochromatic. So I'll take one of these words here just to keep it consistent, and let's type in monochromatic, and hopefully you remember that mono means one and chromatic means color. So let's work on monochromatic, and it's pretty easy to do a monochromatic color scheme if we're on HSB. So this is the hue, and as long as you keep the hue in the same spot and don't move it, that is going to be monochromatic. So we'll go here, I'm going to go to a brush, and I'm going to color a little color right here just with a brush, and there's green. So I'll make a copy of this using Alt click and drag, and I'm going to use a different tool other than the brush because it is putting a lot of lines in here. I'm going to use actually the blob brush. Let's use the blob brush. That'll keep our vectors a little more solid here, just one solid shape using the blob tool. So now I'm going to alt click and drag this little blob shape here, and as long as I don't move the hue scale, the chroma, this is hue, It also means chroma, also means color. If I don't move this, it keeps it monochromatic. So I can adjust the saturation and the brightness, and it's still monochromatic. So I'm going to take this original color, put it like that, and I can make it a little bit darker. I'll take the same color here and just mess with this again, maybe make it brighter this way and bring this down, something like that. Here we go, monochromatic. I'll take this and I'll even these up using the align tool, align them like that. And here's a good example of monochromatic. I'd like you to do 3 examples of monochromatic. And you can use any color you want, just as long as you don't move that hue scale, that will be monochromatic. Let's do the next one here. Analogous. And I always have trouble spelling analogous, so I'll just go to the presentation here, and there's analogous. I can just select that, copy it, and paste it here. There's analogous. I don't need the comma. And what I'll do is I'll just slide over my monochromatic. I'll put analogous, and let me start with a color here. I'll just use my same blob. I'll click and drag, use my same blob, but I'm going to change the hue here. I'm going to go to like a red. I'll change my saturation to something like that. Let's go to analogous, and I'm going to just I'll click and drag this one. Now I do move the hue scale, so I'm going to slide over a little bit, and that color is close together on the color wheel. You see that? So this one is also the same color, and I can change the saturation a little bit. I'm going to take this color again here, and I'll slide over to maybe a more yellow color, and let's make this one dark here and saturated. So these are analogous. That looks brown. It's hard to tell analogous with brown. Let me go into yellow here just so you can tell. And this one is a warm analogous. Okay, so we can just call this one warm. It's much too big. We'll scale it down. And we're starting to run into a problem with the negative space over here. So if we need to shrink these down, we can, to give us some more negative space. So this one's analogous. And as long as you just move to the colors next to each other on the color wheel, that is analogous. Let's go to this blue area here. And then sometimes you don't even have to change the color. You can just change the saturation or the brightness and still remain analogous. This one is just plain analogous. It's not warm or cool. But I would like to make a cool, some people might call this cool, but it's starting to step into that red color range, and that would be considered warm, but blue is definitely cool. So this one doesn't have a designation. It's not warm or cool. Okay, so let's do this last one here, the complementary. Right now we have monochromatic and analogous. Make sure that you do different variations of the color. Don't just do a similar one. Don't do the same one for all these. Just make sure that this one, you just change the hue, and you can eyedropper on these other ones, and just vary the saturation and brightness for each one of these to get your monochromatic. And then the warm ones, make sure that you do 3 analogous. Let's do 3 complementary as well. And complementary has one of these weird spellings, so we're going to go back to the PDF document here. Complementary. Some people spell this wrong because there is another version of this word that means things that work well together, but complement the color type of complementary is specifically those colors that are 180 degrees from each other on the color wheel. That is a little slightly different than the complementary of giving someone a compliment or things that work well together, something like that. So let's do complementary. And we'll take this color here. And what strangely you would think you could go to this color wheel and subtract either 180 degrees or add 180 degrees, and you would get the complementary color. Unfortunately, this is a digital color wheel, and when you do that, if I were to multiply 100 plus 180, I would get 280. So when I put in 280 up here, I would get this other color, which was not the complementary color of this one. I think I did the math wrong there. It was 90 plus 180, 270. So even if I put 270 here, that's not exactly the complementary color here. So let's just say that this one is green. Let's look at RGB, and we'll give it all the green just to make it very obvious. So here's green, and when you go look at the color wheel here, green on the artistic type color wheel, 180 degrees is red. So here we're going to have to go to the red scale. There we have red. So now these are the two complementary colors. Make sure you put plenty of negative space between these two. And let's do another color. Let's just do purple. Go to this color around here, and the complementary color of purple is yellow. And we can go to yellow using the CMYK scale. There's yellow. And one more. So make sure that you do 3 of each one of these. One other thing that I want you to put on here, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Also, don't forget to put your primary, secondary, and tertiary. You need to label that on here. That isn't on the instructions. Also, but the last thing that I want you to do is one more thing. And I want you to be as creative as possible on this. Color psychology. And that is one word that I know that I misspelled on here. So let's do our spell check. Make sure you do spell check before you complete this thing. Let's see if it will fix my psychology here. Monochromatic. Didn't realize I misspelled that. Warm, not worried about that. Color psychology. It did fix that for me. So make sure you put some color psychology on here. Okay? I don't care how you do it. You can look at the way the other students did it on theirs. Just make sure that you put some on here. Okay? Be creative on how you want to put this. Also, work on your negative space for graphic design elements. And that's it. That's the color wheel. Hopefully you're done with this project by now.